I don't know, when my oldest daughter was about 19, 20 years old, she went to the bank one day, and the bank teller convinced her that she needed a credit card. That's not good for a 19-year-old to have a credit card. I'm like, oh my goodness. And she didn't tell me. The little sinner didn't tell me that she had gotten herself a credit card. And somehow she got to the mail before I did. She had the credit card in her possession. And then every month when the credit card bill came in, she got to the mail before I did. And I didn't know that she had a credit card. Well, this is how they sold her on the credit card. They said, you need a credit card. This credit card that we're offering you today has 0% interest for the first year. And as long as you pay that card down every time, and after a year you don't have any accumulating principal on that, then you don't have to worry about anything. We're going to give you $1,000 credit line. You can spend $1,000 however you want to, interest-free for a full year. She's like, sign me up, $1,000, I'll take it. She didn't understand how to use a credit card, and because it was interest-free, first month when the bill came in and she'd spend a couple $100 on it, she said, well, I don't have to pay anything. She thought, this is great. This is the gravy train. So she kept on using that credit card. She maxed it out. $1,000 in the month, number 11th month, the 11th month before the interest is accrued throughout the entire year. I go to the mailbox before she does, and I get the mail, and I see something interesting as I'm shuffling through the mail. I see that there's something there from a bank, and it's got my daughter's name upon it. And my wife, being the excellent parent that she is, immediately opens it up to see what in the world is going on. So she rips open and she opens it up. She says, you're not going to believe this, but your daughter got a credit card. I said, you got to be kidding me right now. She got a credit card? I said, well, how's she doing with the credit card? She says, she's not doing good with the credit card at all. She's maxed it out. She's got $1,000 debt. And next month, guess what? All the interest that's going to accrue over that year is going to hit her. It's over $200. I said, you got to be kidding me. Little sinner went and got a credit card. She said, what are we going to do? I said, I don't know. But the wages of sin is death. Some of you enjoyed that a little too much. I said, all right, we got some options. I said, let's just weigh our options, all right? Option number one, she just pays her credit card. Or better yet, she doesn't. She doesn't pay her credit card. We don't even tell her about it. We don't even worry about it. We just say, you know what? She got herself in this mess. She'll get herself out of the mess. That's what we do. Just let her just do it right there. Just whatever. She'll just have that huge interest rate hit her, and she'll watch her money flush down like a toilet. Let's do that. Let's not say anything to her and let her reap the consequences for what she's done. And my wife said, no, I don't want to do that. I said, seriously? How's she ever going to learn anything if she doesn't feel the consequences for what she's done? Well, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's an excellent idea. She said, is there any other option? Is there any other option? I said, well, I got another option. I could call her on the phone. Say, guess what? Mom opened up your credit card bill. You got $1,000 in credit card debt. I want you paying it off right here, right now, today. Of course, that would have been the equivalent of me calling her and saying, Mackenzie, I want you to make birds swim and fish fly, and I want all cats to die. As awesome as that would be, it would also be an impossibility that she could pull that off. Just the way that it would be impossible for her to pay the $1,000 because she's broke. So I said, option two is not going to work. She's got no money. Let's go back to option one. Christy said, no, I don't like option one. I said, oh, come on. She said, is there another option? I said, I can't think of anything, to be honest with you. She said, well, I've got an option. Now, my wife's the grace giver. I said, what's your option? She said, well, we could just pay it for her. I started going into convulsive fits. That's a stupid idea. We're not paying that off. She said, now hear me out, hear me. I said, no. She said she can make monthly payments to us. It would be interest-free, and she pays down the debt, and we cut her credit card up. I said, I don't want to do that. And then she looked at me, and she does this from time to time. She says, well, what would Jesus do? Seriously? You're throwing the Jesus card at me? Well, what would he do? He'd forgive the debt. That's exactly what he would do, wouldn't it be? Now, some of you are in credit card debt. Don't come to me. Because I'm not helping you out. That's a privilege that my daughter has because of her mother, okay? I mean, that's just the way. Isn't that what God did for us? He paid all of our debt. But unlike me, he doesn't ask you to give monthly payments to pay it back. He just forgives it completely. And I think when you understand that, when you comprehend the grace of God, why do you think the most beloved song among all people on planet Earth is Amazing Grace? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was so lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. We need to learn to be content with what we've got. I'm going to say something that absolutely shocks some of you in this room, but you're rich. You didn't know that, but you should be very excited. You're rich. Congratulations. You said, I don't feel rich at all. People around me got more than I've got. I'm not rich. Oh, yes, you are. According to the world's population, you're extremely rich. See, the problem for Americans is we mostly live in a bubble, and we think this is the real world. But if you've ever traveled overseas, you would know this isn't the real world. That this is fantasy land if you were at Disney. We don't live like everybody else lives. We've been blessed. I was reading a book by Andy Stanley, and he was talking about in Western culture, Western civilization, we have some advantages that other parts of the world don't have. He said, for example, the 5-day work week. We work 5 days a week. Most of us work 5 days a week. And with that 5 days of working, we are able to provide 7 days worth of food, clothing, shelter, take care of the needs of our family. That's unheard of. Our friends in Belize, they work 7 days a week because they have to. They have to put food on their table, to put clothes on their kids' back, to have shelter. They have to work 7 days a week. In fact, most of the world works 7 days a week. Retirement, there's no such thing as retirement in Belize unless you're an expat that comes from another country. But for the Belizean people, they will work till the day they die. And they know that. Here's the other thing. In America, one person can go to work, and off that one person's salary, it can feed up to 4, 5, 6 people, 7 people in the family, depending on how big the family is. That's unheard of in other cultures. In Belize, when their kids are old enough, 4, 5, 6 years old, they're out selling. If you've been overseas, you know what I'm talking about. They're selling jewelry, they're selling blankets, they're selling anything that they possibly can. Why? They have to. They've got to join in on the kiddie. Friends, you're rich. I read this past week that if you make $37,000 a year, you're in the 4% club. You're richer than 96% of the world's population. You're a 4%er. Yay! Isn't that great? Yay! Let's have some confetti. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Don't buy those things. 3 out of 4 services, that's what I've gotten right there. I'm too powerful for the confetti, all right? On a world scale, you don't have problems like other people have. You have first world problems, right? Bad cell phone coverage, first world problem. My computer's slow, first world problem. Can't decide where I want to go on vacation, first world problem. My plane's delayed, first world problem. Amazon Prime doesn't have my size. First world problem. This morning when you got up in other parts of the world, there were other people that got up. There was a woman who woke up knowing that she needed to get water. She couldn't walk into her kitchen and turn on the faucet to get the water. No, she has to grab the jug. She has to walk 2 miles to get to the cleanest source of water she can find, fill her jug up, put it on her head, walk 2 miles to get back so her family can have something to drink today. They can't imagine a place where there's such an abundance of water that they would just pour it on their lawns. Feeling guilty? I hope not. If anybody walks out these doors feeling guilty, I have done a disservice to you. I don't want you to feel guilt. I want you to feel grateful. Because if you walk out of here feeling guilty, then you're not going to do anything. When the guilt goes away, nothing's going to change in your life. But if you'll feel gratitude for what God's blessed you with, it'll well up this sense of generosity. You say, wow, I'm in the 4% club. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's incredible. And so you look at that and you say, okay, God, you've entrusted to me more resources than 96% of the world's population. And all of a sudden it'll sober you up and you'll be grateful. And you're like, okay, God, what do we want to do? Lead me, guide me in this, because I want to leave this world in better shape than the way I found it. I don't want it to be about my kingdom. Your kingdom come. Listen, there's going to be a day that we're going to die and we're going to go to heaven, and you're going to meet people from all different parts of the world that you had an impact in because you were generous. And they're going to walk up to you and go, I'm here today because of your generosity. Don't you want that? I mean, when you saw the videos earlier, weren't you so proud to be a part of a church that cares about things like that? And didn't you say to yourself, oh man, I want to fund that? That means more to me than the latest upgrade. That means more to me than butt warmers in my car. Oh man. I want to impact people's lives. Less of me and more of him. The other day, actually a couple of years ago, we're like the typical family, watching on the phones, sitting around in the living room, nothing on TV, and no one's talking to each other, but we're all goofing on our phones. And Hannah and Cammie had seen something in some feed. I don't know if it's a social media stupid thing or what it was, but they saw something and it scared them. I think it was something about North Korea. North Korea was shooting off missiles at the time, and it looked like there was going to be war, and they were scared. And so they looked at me and they said, Dad, what's going on here? I mean, is this something we need to be worried about? And I knew, we need to refocus their attention. And so I said, well, let me ask you a couple of questions, all right? Is God still in control? And my two daughters looked at me and they said, yes. I said, has God ever said, oops? They said, no. I said, has God ever said, what? They said, no, God's never said, what? I said, do you believe that greater is he that is in you than he that's in this world? They said, yes. I said, do you believe that God can do immeasurably more than anything you've ever dreamed or imagined? They said, yes. I said, do you believe that Satan is defeated and that Jesus has won the war? They said, yes. I said, kids, as God was with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he's with you. As he was with Joshua when the walls of Jericho fell down, he's with you. As he was with Gideon when he faced the Midianites and he was outnumbered so greatly and they didn't even use a sword to defeat them, God is with you. Do you remember David runs out onto the battlefield and faces a giant of a man by the name of Goliath? And he kills him with just a slingshot and a few stones. God was with David. God is with you. Do you remember Daniel in the lion's den? Because he refused to stop praying to his God, God sent angels to protect Daniel. God has angels concerning you. Do you understand this, kids? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego find themselves in a fiery furnace because they refused to bow down to an image of gold. And Jesus was with them in the fire. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. And the last time I looked at this, let me tell you something. Wait a second. Let me tell you something, kids. The same Holy Spirit that lived in them lives in you. The same Holy Spirit that lived in them lives in you. And this is not your home. You're going to heaven. And God did not give us the spirit of fear, but he gave us the spirit of power and love and self-control. It was like I was doing a halftime show. No, that's the wrong thing. I didn't mean a halftime show. It's like I was doing a halftime pep talk. You know what I'm saying? And if I'd have opened up the door and sent my two girls out, they'd have found Satan and kicked his butt at that point in time. Do you understand what I'm saying? So what did I do there? I refocused their attention. We took that thought captive. We made it obedient to Jesus because we are more than conquerors. Stop focusing on your problems and on your worries and start focusing on your Savior. He has overcome it all. And he won't let you down. He won't let you down.
Every time I try to make it on my own, every time I try to stand and start to fall, all those lonely roads there was Jesus. When the life I built came crashing to the ground, when the friends I had were nowhere to be found, I couldn't see it then, but I can see it now. There was Jesus. In the waiting, in the searching, in the healing and the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, where I've been and where I'm going, even when I didn't know it or couldn't see it, there was Jesus. For this man who needs amazing kind of grace, for forgiveness at a price I couldn't pay. I'm not perfect, so I thank God every day. There was Jesus. There was Jesus. In the waiting, in the searching, in the healing and the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, where I've been and where I'm going, even when I didn't know it or couldn't see it, there was Jesus. On the mountain, in the valleys, there was Jesus. In the shadows of the alleys, there was Jesus. In the fire, in the flood, there was Jesus. Always is and always was. No, I never walk alone. You're always there. In the waiting, in the searching, in the healing and the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, where I've been and where I'm going, even when I didn't know it or couldn't see it, there was Jesus. There was Jesus. There was Jesus.
I remember the very first day that Mackenzie went to kindergarten. Do you remember the very first day that your child went off to school? Some of you dads, you got to go to work that day and miss the drama. You are a lucky, lucky man. I'm the fool who took the day off so that I could be a part of the first day of kindergarten. Christy and I wrote it down on our calendar. We counted down the days. We dreaded this day. And the reason we dreaded this day so much was because her entire world surrounded around me and Christy. And we kind of liked the fact that her entire world surrounded around me and Christy. We were the ones that were having fun with her, playing with her, swinging with her, dancing with her. We were the ones that were patching up her wounds and kissing her boo-boos. We were the ones wiping every tear from our eye. We liked the fact that she was in this little bubble of just the three of us. But now things were going to change, and I didn't want them to change. I didn't want her to go. Now her bubble is going to be burst. She's going to have a teacher. She's going to have the potential for friendships. There's going to be books. There's going to be learning. There's going to be knowledge, and I just didn't want any of that for her. Well, the day finally came, and I remember staying on one side of the house while Christy and Mackenzie were on the other side of the house. It was my wife that got Mackenzie dressed on this day. It was my wife that did Mackenzie's hair. In fact, I stayed away because I knew I was going to lose it. The emotion was really high, and I could feel the tears filling up in my eyes. Then my wife had the bright idea that it might be a good thing for me to have breakfast with Mackenzie at the kitchen table. I'm thinking, this is just great. I'm trying not to lose it. She seems excited about going to school. I'm not excited about her going to school, and now I got to have breakfast with her. How am I going to hold it together? So she's over there. She's eating her breakfast. I'm eating my breakfast, and she starts asking me questions. And I can hardly answer her questions. I'm just giving her one-word sentences, and she's just kind of looking at me like, what in the world is wrong with Dad? Well, we got done, we brushed our teeth, and now it was time to go outside and take the pictures. You always take pictures on the first day of school. Here's Mackenzie's picture on the first day of her school. She was so cute. She looks like her mom. I'm so thankful that she looks like her mom. And look how small she is, and look how big the backpack is. The backpacks are huge for these kindergartners. Well, I don't want her to go, but now it's time. And this is the moment I've been dreading. So I grabbed a hold of her hand, Christy grabbed a hold of the other hand, and we began to walk down the street to go to the corner where the bus was going to pick her up. And as we stood there waiting for the bus, she appeared to be brave. And so I appeared to be brave as well. But when the bus came around the corner, I saw her bottom lip begin to quiver. The courage was getting sucked out of her. So I tried to tickle her. I tried to tell a joke or two, but I wasn't very funny, kind of like a normal. And I remember getting down on one knee, grabbing her, giving her a kiss. And I remember one of the hardest sentences I've ever said in my life. I said, I'll be here when you get home. Because I didn't want to let her go. And she got on board that bus, and they drove my little girl away. Now that sentence, I'll be right here when you get back home, was really a lie, because Christy and we ran down the street, got in the car, and we followed the bus. So we were really just a few feet away the whole time, to be honest with you. We were those parents, okay? I don't know if we have any of those parents in here as well. But we were following the bus, and then we pulled in the parking lot. We got out and ran as fast as we could, and we saw her empty out of the bus. And we saw her walk down the sidewalk like we had told her to and go in the right entrance. She was doing everything perfect. And then she went right into her classroom. And we were the parents that were kind of watching outside the window of the classroom. You know, we were those creepy parents. You know what I'm talking about? We saw that the teacher had a little story going over in the corner, and that the kids had all gathered to hear the story, and that she'd already made a couple of friends, and I knew at that point that she was going to be okay. We got back in the car, and we drove home, and we drove in silence. Got into the car, in the house, got into the kitchen, and I went and saw that the bowl that she had had cereal with was still on the kitchen table. Little sinner hadn't put it in the dishwasher. And when I saw that bowl, I just lost it. Because I didn't want my little girl to go. And I wonder if that's the way God the Father felt when it was time for him to send his son into our world. I was reading a book by Max Lucado, and in the book he talks about the love the Father had for the Son and how proud he was of his Son. I mean, think about it. On the day of his birth, he sends angels to light up the sky to a bunch of lowly shepherds. And he says, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, has come into our world. I mean, God just can't contain himself. He's so excited. And then when Jesus gets baptized years later and he comes up out of the water, there's a booming voice that comes from the clouds that says, this is my Son whom I love. In him I am well pleased. Listen to him. Listen to what he has to say. He just couldn't hold back, could he? And just days before Jesus is crucified for the sins of all mankind, it's on the Mount of Transfiguration that God sends some reinforcements into Jesus. He knows that it's going to be difficult. He knows the path is going to be hard. So he sends Moses and he sends Elijah to give Jesus encouragement and to give him support. Only a dad would think of doing something like that. Now, the differences between me sending Mackenzie to school and God sending his son to this earth are vast, aren't they? I sent her into a safe environment. God sent his son into this cruel world where he knew a Roman soldier was going to take a whip and beat his son so badly that his front and his chest and his back would look like raw meat. I sent my child to school in hopes that maybe she could make some friends. God sent his son into this world knowing he would be mocked and laughed at and spit upon and eventually crucified. I told my little girl over and over again the days leading up to the first day of kindergarten, if you need me, you know my number. All you got to do is call me and I'll be there in a blink of an eye. And I meant it. But God the Father knew Then the moment that his son would need him the most, as he hung on the cross, becoming sin for all mankind, and as he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? God the Father knew he'd have to turn his back on his only son, that he had to hold on to his throne with white-knuckle intensity, because if he saves his son and he rescues his son, we have no hope at all. The amazing love that God the Father and God the Son have for us, so that we can have relationship with God. So as we go through this today, I want this to be the thing that you think about over and over and over again. He did it for me. He did it for me. He came for me. He suffered for me. He died for me. I remember years ago when my dad passed away, my middle daughter, Hannah, at the time, was just 10 years old. And this was the biggest thing that had happened in her life that was awful, that was tragic up to this point. It was the worst thing that had ever occurred to her. And so we go to the funeral home because we're going to have the funeral at the funeral home. And she's overwhelmed. I mean, it's just absolutely sensory overload. And she walks over, and there was a room off of where we were going to have the funeral where the family could meet. And we were getting ready to do a visitation. And Hannah didn't want to come and see the casket where her grandpa was. And she's in the other room, and she's standing in a corner, but not with her back against the corner. She's standing in the corner with her face in the corner. She's trying to become invisible. She's trying to hide. And I looked at Christy, and my kids, their whole world was just out of control. And I said, you know what our role is today? Is to get our kids through this. And my wife is phenomenal, and she worked her magic between all three kids. I'm not as talented as her. I kept my eye on Hannah because Mackenzie was doing okay, and Cameron was too young at the time to really understand what was going on. But Hannah, she understood, and yet she couldn't comprehend it. And so I stood by her side. I guarded her. I took care of her. That whole day, I made sure that she was going to be okay. And what's my point? Here I am, a sinner to the core of my being. And yet I was aware that my daughter was hurting. My daughter was suffering. And I wanted to help her in the midst of her pain. Now, if I wanted to do that, how much more so do you think your Heavenly Father, your dad, wants to help you, to sustain you, to give you strength to get through the storms that we're all going to face in this life? Friends, we're all going to face them. You're either in a storm, you just left a storm, or you're heading for a storm. And right now, our nation is in the midst of a storm. Who are you going to lean on for strength? You can lean on yourself. You can face the storms in life yourself if you want to. I just choose not to. I know I'm not big enough. I know I'm not smart enough. And I know I'm not powerful enough to handle what's going on in my life. I need help. I need the power of God. And he promises us this, that even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil, for he is with us. His rod and his staff, they comfort us. So don't you think for a second that God turns a blind eye to your crisis, to your heartache, or to your pain. Jesus is with you in the midst of it. Jesus promised us it would be this way, so let's get rid of the illusion that we're going to have an easy life and everybody's going to live happily ever after. God never said that. Walt Disney said that. Jesus said this, in this world you will have trouble. Not that you might have trouble or you could have trouble. It says you will have trouble. But then he said this, you take heart, for I have overcome the world. I'm married so far over my head, and my wife is my biggest fan. She is my greatest encourager. Well, since all this stay-at-home order stuff has started and the quarantine and all that crazy stuff, I started bringing my lunch with me when I come to work. And so my wife would put my lunch together, and I would carry it, and I would put it in the fridge, and then it was time to eat. I would, start eating my lunch, and in the bottom, she placed these encouraging notes for me. She knows how hard it's been during this time for me trying to navigate. You don't even really know what's going to be happening, because you're waiting on a governor's order, or you're reading this and it's just been a really stressful time. And then again, coming into an auditorium where there's nobody in the auditorium and you're trying to speak to nobody but still trying to communicate to somebody, it's just been super stressful. So she started writing all these encouraging notes, and she's done this throughout the course of our marriage. Let me just share a couple of things she wrote to me. She said, "You'll do great today on all your devotions and messages. Thank you for giving us something to look forward to each day. It allows us to redirect our attention to Jesus. Thank you for giving us great messages that give us hope and remind us what Jesus has done for us. You're the best speaker I've ever heard." Isn't that nice? In fairness to all the other speakers, she hasn't heard them because I won't let her listen to them. Let me give you another one. "I love you. Good luck on writing your message today. Thank you for choosing me to do life with you. I'm the lucky one that she chose me. I'm thankful for you." How about this one? "I know you did great on your sermon today. You always do. You and I both know that's not true. Thank you for putting us first every day. Thank you for going to work each day and putting up with so much to provide for us." I'm never throwing these notes away. And it didn't take her very long to do it, but this encouragement fuels my soul. Do you know what my biggest fear is? My biggest fear is that I'll let her down. Because she sees things in me that I don't see in myself. And she believes in me, and I want to rise up to what she sees. So I could ask you a question. Are you a bragger or are you a nagger? Every single day we get beaten down. Beaten down by our failures, beaten down by our mistakes, beaten down by our second guessing of ourselves, beaten down by the voices inside of our heads, beaten down by our jobs. We shouldn't be beaten down by our spouse. The home should be a safe haven where we encourage each other and we build each other up and we lift each other up and we believe things in each other that nobody else believes in us. See, what most people don't understand is there's a cost to following Jesus. John Orris was a pastor of a church in Romania during communist rule, and they had to meet under secrecy because the government would imprison them. And so he would have many people after he preached that would want to give their lives over to Jesus. And he would always say the same thing to him. He'd say, I'm so excited that you want to give your life to Christ, but there's a cost involved. And so before you make this commitment, before you make this decision, you need to understand the cost that's involved. And so he'd encourage him to go to a 3-month class where he could explain what it really means to follow Jesus. And most of them would sign up for the class. At the end of 3 months, at the last class, he would ask the question, how many of you still want to give your life to Jesus? And most of them would raise their hand that they still wanted to. And then John would say this, okay, tomorrow we're going to take you to the river and we're going to baptize you. And that's when the trouble's going to start for you. There'll be informers who will write down your name. Some of you are going to lose your families. Some of you are going to lose your freedom. Some of you are going to lose your lives. Why did he do that? Why was he so intense? Because he wanted them to get to the point where knowing Jesus and following Jesus was more important than anything they could ever lose in this life. And some of us, we're so empty and we're so miserable, and we go to church week after week after week, and you do not have a relationship with him. You don't talk to him. You don't seek him. He's not the priority of your life. You're not leveraging everything you are for him. You want just enough Jesus to save you, but not enough Jesus to change you. And that's why you're so empty inside. Listen, when Jesus called people to come follow him, he didn't mince any words, did he? He was right up front about the commitment that he was looking for. Look at what he says here. He says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Whatever loses their life for me will find it. That's a strange way to do recruiting, don't you think? I mean, you would think that Jesus would soften his words, say, hey man, if you want to follow me, I'm going to give you all the riches and all the health and all the wealth. Come on. I mean, if he's all interested in a big crowd, that's the way you do it, right? No, Jesus was interested in telling them the truth. This is what it's really going to cost you. You deny yourself. Does that sound pleasant? then you take up your cross. We don't get that one. First century, they understood it. See, today the cross is nothing more than a piece of jewelry. But in the first century, they had seen people be crucified, thousands of them. Look at this a little bit later. Jesus says this, those who love their life will lose it, while those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me. And that's the real issue. Do you really believe that Jesus is worth following? C.S. Lewis, great theologian, once said, the only thing Christianity cannot be is moderately important. If it's really true, then it deserves everything you've got. If it's not true, you shouldn't be here right now. Faith without works is dead. You're saved by grace, but there should be evidence flowing out of you that you really were committed and you really meant the words that you said. Is this an area of your life you're faking it? Or don't you think it's time to fix it?
Is anybody's sunshine been turned to rain? Is anybody's blue sky been turned to gray? Is anybody's good time turned out real bad? Is anybody's happiness turned out sad? And I know I can't trust in the things that I see. All I know is that working is working in me. So let it rain, let it pour. Lord, I need you more and more. Let it rain, rain down on me. Every day, whatever you want, not my will but yours, Lord. Let it rain, rain down on me. Is there anybody's mountain too tall to climb? Is there anybody's faith in like you're running dry? Let me tell you, he's able, he's done it for me. He's done it for me. He can take every mountain and throw it to the sea. So let it rain, let it pour. Lord, I need you more and more. Let it rain, rain down on me. Every day, whatever you want, not my will but yours, Lord. Let it rain, rain down on me. Yeah, the same God who brought the sunshine is the same one who brings the rain. Yeah, the same God who made the sunshine is the same one who knows my name. So let it rain, let it pour. Lord, I need you more and more. Let it rain, rain down